Whenever a benefit is awarded in exchange for some effort, there will be some people who will cheat and try to get the benefit without putting in the effort. This happens in every context, and not only when the benefit is monetary. It happens in competitions, in taxation, in sports, on the workplace, and of course in academia. And that's a pain. First of all, because it's unfair towards the honest people who don't cheat, but also because a lot of resources must be wasted on trying to detect cheating with various degrees of success, and then on punishing the detected cheating in order to deter future cheating. But this in turn creates a bunch of other problems. Detecting cheaters is never an exact process, so you will end up with false positives. These are the subjects that you falsely classified as cheaters, so you thought they cheated, but actually they didn't. And false negatives. These are subjects falsely classified as non-cheating, so you fail to notice that they in fact did cheat. And when you punish a true positive, someone who you correctly classified as a cheater, all is well. But when you punish a false positive, someone who looked like they cheated but they didn't, that's a great injustice. It's punishing an innocent. It's something that must absolutely be avoided. And on the other hand, when you fail to punish a false negative because you didn't notice that they cheated, then that's unfair as well, both towards the honest people, the true negatives and the false positives, and towards those other cheaters that you actually spotted, the true positives, because they got punished and the other ones who went undetected didn't get punished. It's basically a mess. Wouldn't it be so much better if we could ensure that people wouldn't cheat in the first place? Is it even possible to do that? What do you think? Can we prevent cheating altogether instead of dealing with it after the fact? Welcome to Frank Staiano Explains. I'm a professor of security and privacy at the University of Cambridge, and like most educators, I regularly have to deal with cheating. It doesn't matter if you're teaching illiterate people or intellectually outstanding people. When you set an exam, some people will attempt to cheat. When you interview people for admission, some will attempt to cheat. When you assign some homework, even if it's not an exam, some will attempt to cheat. When you run a competition, and I've co-founded and hosted a few cybersecurity competitions, as you can see in the playlist, some of the participants will attempt to cheat, especially if you offer money as a prize, but even if you don't. It's so frustrating, but it's also understandable. It's human nature. People try to find shortcuts. People try to get to their objective with the least possible effort. And some even get a kick out of beating the system. It makes them feel more clever. So we have to be prepared. We have to anticipate and expect cheating, and we are forced to invest a lot of extra effort into making cheating hard in the first place, which is pretty difficult nowadays if you allow people to do the test on their own internet-connected computer. Finding out if any cheating is still occurring despite all your attempts at making it difficult, and taking appropriate action when cheating does occur, with all the problems that I just highlighted from the false positives and the false negatives. And that is an enormous amount of effort that we educators must sink into fighting cheating, and which does absolutely no good to the honest students who don't engage in cheating, whether they are true negatives or false positives. And so in that sense, it's totally wasted effort. If we didn't have to waste so much effort, so much time, so many resources, so many brain cycles on the cheaters, then we could invest all that effort into more interesting things, such as offering a better education to the honest students. So I came up with a somewhat disruptive idea. Instead of dealing with cheating when it occurs, remove the reason for cheating by changing the rules of the game. It's not a solution that applies easily to all possible cases of cheating, including sports competition, taxation, and so on, but it makes sense in at least some contexts. I'm actually doing that as we speak. I put forward the proposal to the relevant committee in my department, and I'm waiting to see if it gets enough traction. Apparently, there's some controversy over it, and I've encountered quite a bit of resistance, so it probably won't be adopted, but let me share with you what my idea is. And by the way, nowadays, I put a little disclaimer at the start of every video, but let me reiterate this very explicitly. Although I teach at the University of Cambridge, this YouTube channel is not owned by the university, but by my company, Cambridge Cyber, and so are all the videos on it. Anything I say in any of my videos is just my own ideas, not an official position of my university, my college, or my department. I'll tell you my idea, but don't attribute it to any of these other entities. So the context is that a number of our lecturers, besides giving lectures, they assign practical exercises, which require the students to put into practice what the lecturers have taught them. Students might be asked to write a program, build a piece of hardware, run an experiment, whatever. Anyway, this hands-on application of the principles is a very useful learning aid to consolidate the theoretical knowledge that's conveyed through the lectures. And it's very good pedagogically. It's so good that the department makes these exercises mandatory. These exercises don't receive a grade, but just a Boolean done or not done, with a penalty associated with not done. And this leads to some percentage of the students resorting to plagiarism. In other words, submitting a solution that was developed by someone else. So my very simple idea is to turn these exercises from mandatory to optional, which instantly removes any motivation for cheating. Students who don't do the exercises will obviously learn less than those who do them, and that's par for the course. That's why we regard doing the exercises as beneficial, and that's why we go to the trouble of preparing the exercises in the first place. I strongly recommend that my students do the practical exercises associated with my courses, because doing so will definitely improve their understanding and mastery of the material. I'm just saying that I don't want to force them to do them, because I see that as pretty pointless. I can and I will offer students, and indeed all viewers of this channel, the best possible opportunity to get an outstanding education in computer science. But it's up to them to take it. I don't see it as my role to oblige them to take it. You want to become good and really own the content of the course I teach? Then here are some practical hands-on exercises designed to help you with that. You want to do them? Great. They will require hard work, but that's really the only way that you will truly learn. You don't want to do them? Fine, it's your choice, like it's your choice to turn up to the lectures or not. You might regret it later, but I'm not going to chase you around with a shotgun to force you to do them. Getting an excellent education is a privilege that is yours for the taking. It's not a duty, and it's certainly not a duty I want to enforce if the student doesn't care about it. Clearly, the student who cheats doesn't care about getting an excellent education, otherwise they would just do the exercise. If they are successful at cheating without being detected, then they will get a good grade, but clearly not a good education. They will still be a rubbish computer scientist, even if they can show off their fake grades to those who believe in that. So I just want to continue to offer the excellent education to those who are interested in that by continuing to provide the hands-on exercise. But I just want to make these exercises entirely optional, and this will remove the original reason for cheating. In fact, if we go back in history, that's what I used to do 15 years ago or so in my algorithms course. I had optional programming exercises, which I called the micro challenges, which were there to inspire the keenest students to go a little further than the basics and learn something extra. Then at some point, the department said, you have practical programming exercises, very nice, let's have everyone do them. And then they took some of my micro challenges, they changed them a little bit and turned them into mandatory practicals, and now everybody had to do them. Well, personally, I sometimes think we should just remove exams and grades altogether. We should just give people a great education, which is the only thing that ultimately matters, and do away with the degree and the piece of paper at the end. That's a much more radical idea, and I see plenty of reasons why people would object to that. So let's leave that discussion for another time, because it would take us too far. If we get back to the more specific issue I'm dealing with now, of the practical exercises that are associated with coursework, which I am trying to reform right now and make optional instead of mandatory, well, I was surprised at the pushback I got against my attempt at basically solving the cheating issue with a bit of incentive engineering. And by the way, I have recent case history of my plan working successfully, because in 2022 I took over our second year cybersecurity course, and you may attend all my lectures at no charge in the playlist up there. And in the previous incarnation of this course, there used to be mandatory practical exercises called TICs. I ditched them and I substituted them with other exercises that I made entirely optional. And then I surveyed the students, and this is what one of them wrote in response. I loved the inclusion of seed labs, even though they were not especially hard. It really helped internalize the material. I liked that they were not ticked. I did them all because they are useful and interesting, but I got stuck in one place. I wouldn't have liked to spend copious amounts of time getting the single thing right for a tick in a stressful term like Easter. But some of my colleagues were not convinced by my reasoning, and they thought that it was important for all students to do the practice, and that if we made the exercise optional, then a majority of students might end up not doing them and end up with a second-rate education. I thought it was proper for us to treat students as adults, as they are, and I imagined that at least the students themselves would appreciate this stance. But instead, I was rather surprised when, in a recent meeting where I was allowed to float my proposal to undergraduate student representatives, of which there were 3, one for each of the 3 years of the course, the general feeling they expressed was that they preferred the exercises to be mandatory, otherwise they would not do them and then they would regret it later. These were just individual comments of these 3 students because they hadn't yet consulted with all the other students that they were there to represent. But still, I did not anticipate that. And it did not match the outcome of the survey I did in 2021-22 at the end of this new cybersecurity course that I was talking about, where more people said that they enjoyed the fact that the exercises were not ticked. A few alternative ideas were floated at that meeting, some more useful than others, but none of them satisfactorily addressed the original problem of cheating. I still believe that my little incentive engineering hack is the right way to go, and that it has only benefits for the honest students, which thankfully are the majority. But maybe I'm wrong, okay? And clearly my views are not universally shared. What do you think? Do you think these hands-on exercises should be mandatory or optional, and why? Do you have any better suggestions on how to eliminate cheating? Let me know in the comments. I'd be keen to hear your views, even though we might disagree. And say stereo cassette deck in your comment if you want me to rejoice in the fact that you stayed with me until the end. Thank you very much.